My favorite goddess of all time is the Hindu goddess Kali Ma. I said this to someone who happened to be Hindu, and he looked at me funny. That's sort of like a Hindu saying to a Christian, "I'm so intrigued by the devil." Could you tell me a little bit more about your Satan? The origins of Kali Ma are found in the Devi Mahatmya. I'm going to try Mahatma. A religious text dating back to the 5th and 6th centuries AD. She is a configuration born from the brow of Durga in battle. The fierce, destructive aspect, one deity in the holy triptych of Kali, Kali Ma, and the Divine Mother. She courts destruction to manifest creation. She is the archetype who destroys ego. Unlike her voluptuous counterparts of the West, Venus, Athena, and Aphrodite, those full-figured gals mounted front and center on Greek pantheons, this goddess packs a terrifying punch. She dons the armor of severed limbs and a necklace of decapitated heads. This lady is outfitted in dismemberment. After slaughtering demons, she stands over her consort, dripping blood and maniacally beaming a frenzied grin. Ancient writings depict her as emaciated and black, meant to symbolize the timeless universe, but later she's rendered all blue and fleshy. Kali Ma was built to scare, and I'll wager the scariest thing about this crone is that she wasn't concocted to seduce anyone. On January 13th, 2020, an article was published in the Long Island Press, "Long Island's Sex Trafficking Problem Exists in the Shadows," by Maureen Rossi. The report outlines a detailed overview backed by facts and data put out by government agencies, local law enforcement, and nonprofit groups dedicated to exposing how victims, many of them minors, are ushered through a system that is very much in place right now on Long Island. According to Rossi, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI, dedicated an agency, the Long Island Human Trafficking Task Force, to combat the ever-increasing need to address the issues in 2013. As of September 27, 2022, a proposed project, the Suffolk County Anti-Trafficking Initiative, SCATI, I guess, would constitute a collaboration between the Suffolk County Police Department, SCPD, and the Victims Information Bureau of Suffolk, VIBS. VIBS. The project has been awarded $750,000 to date. It should be awarded way more than that in funding from the Department of Justice. I mean, like, how many employees is that going to even pay for? And then on top of whatever else they would need. Maybe a handful of employees at best. Detective John Birbiglia, like, what are they going to use? I don't know. We can't find them at least 1 million, guys? Really? Come on. Richie Rich. Aren't you worth like $1 billion, or you claim to be? Didn't you raise something like $1 billion to try and elongate your life, your own life? Let's face it, dude. Let's be honest. You didn't do that for anyone else but yourself because you're terrified of death. And honestly, whatever, let's be honest again, whatever progress they make with that research to that end will likely only be made available to people who can afford it, people like yourself. It's not going to do any good to the people living in huts in Africa and India and, the lower dregs of society. So you really tricked a bunch of people into giving you a bunch of money that, I guess you gave to a foundation to support research to elongate people's lives. Again, when you take away death, you take away meaningfulness. There's really no meaning of time if it's just there's everything. You never die, and you can just mosey on up and get to places whenever you feel like it. I mean, even people that didn't keep like a hardcore calendar like we keep these days, they still had at least a sense of like, we will be there in 2 settings of the sun or something like that. So hey, Richie Rich, since you have so much money and you're trying so hard to get people to throw the meaningfulness of their lives out, like, why don't you do something meaningful? Why don't you donate a few million, maybe 100 million to that shouldn't be hard for you to raise, like 100 million, right? If you raised $1 billion for people who desperately don't want to die, how about, can you raise a few million, maybe 100 million to probably stop all those kids that probably do want to die because they're in such a horrible, shitty situation, and like death would be a sweet release? Do you think maybe you could donate, figure out how to raise money for such a cause? Richard James Schuler, fat, tubby, greedy bastard that you are. Anyway, sorry, apologies, let me continue. Detective John Birbiglia of Nassau County Police Narcotics Vice Squad represents the Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force on Long Island. Detective Birbiglia stated that there has been pushback from the public regarding the nature of these findings. In Rossi's article, he is quoted as saying, "Many people don't believe that this is going on, that it's only in the movies." According to Rossi, prosecutors from Nassau County state the current laws don't go far enough to keep victims safe or to hold perpetrators accountable, and need to be amended to be effective. A chilling statistic issued from the Safe Center of Long Island reported that in 2019, Long Island, New York was among the top 20 human trafficking jurisdictions in the country. Most notably, their studies claim that 83% of the victims in confirmed cases were U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens, as if it matters, our lives matter more than anyone else's, but typically, like, that should scare you, just because it usually would drum up more attention for a U.S. citizen to go missing, to be trafficked, considering we're in the U.S. Like, immigrants tend to be more at risk for a reason. That's because, they don't have a family base over here usually, or a very big friend base. It's just easier to make them disappear and have that kind of get swept under the rug than it is with U.S. citizens. So the fact that 83% of the victims, most notably, their studies claim that 83% of the victims in confirmed cases were U.S. citizens. 83% of them, U.S. citizens. So that's brazen activity. That's terrifying. It's bad enough when it's just immigrants. Sorry, I spoke in my cigarette. But the fact that the bulk of their victims are U.S. citizens should tell you something. I mean, I guess there are going to be more U.S. citizens in the U.S. than there will be immigrants. But it just seems like there is a pretty large immigrant pool here. This is the United States. We get a lot of people coming here from all over the world, people who covet coming here. And like I said, it's just, they're an easier target. So, yeah, it's brazen criminal activity there. The Polaris Project is a nonprofit agency self-described as a social justice movement to end human trafficking, created to recognize and halt the patterns of sex and labor trafficking in the United States. Established 20 years ago, at a time when victims were typically arrested and returned to their traffickers, they offer an extensive multimedia approach in combating trafficking head-on, starting in communities most vulnerable and continuing all the way to the top, where predators mingle in above-board industries. Their website, polarisproject.org, is a valuable resource, easily accessible to agency officials, victims, and lay people alike. It differs from other nonprofits, as their objective is straightforward and not working under the possible pretense of a victim-centric agenda. Back to Kali Ma, in eastern India. In a region known for being one of Asia's largest red light districts, temples are dedicated to this goddess. Generations of children have been born into slavery there, in slums monopolized by gangs who force hundreds of girls into the sex trade each year. It's the kind of place a wrathful goddess who can't get enough of slicing and dicing can come in handy. Sex workers and their kids are the ones truly in need of a fierce, untamable force. Kali Ma protects women and children, and yes, it's happening here. So, just a little bit of evidence. You know, you've got Long Island police saying, yeah, it's a big problem over here in the United States. Sex trafficking, human trafficking, child trafficking. It's bigger than most people want to admit or think about. And it's not going to get better so long as people are just sitting and guffawing at TikToks and memes. Come on, guys. Get interested in this. This is what you should be interested in, because these kids can't protect themselves. This is why grown adults need to be interested in this and not themselves so much, okay? And like making themselves pretty or getting that next Gucci bag. It's really pathetic, and it makes you an even bigger child than likely than these children who are being abused. They're probably more mature than you. Anyway, so I just thought I'd read that off real quick. Bye.